Ciarán, thank you so much for being here again. Welcome back to the Friends of Sinn Féin podcast. I know that you're on the road right now. I can see you're joining us from the road. Last time we spoke, we were able to kind of wrap up the year, the 2022, looking ahead at what's happening this year. How have you been? How's it going?
It's great, and I feel like I should be Ciarán Quinn reporting from an anonymous hotel room on the road. I'm actually in Boston at the minute. I've been in Boston for the last couple of days and had a really good set of engagements yesterday with trade unionists and with local members of the Assembly. We were very interested in what's happening in Ireland. And we've also, this is the second time we've been on the road since we last spoke. I was in New York and Washington on the second week of January. So yeah, everything's going well. Towards the end of this week, I will be in Springfield, Massachusetts, Providence, Rhode Island, and then in the New Bedford, where I see the temperature somewhere between -11 and -20.
There's no packing appropriately for that, or at least not easily. Well, thank you for joining us from the road and giving us an update on the latest. The last time we were able to catch up, we were looking ahead to the House of Lords taking up legacy legislation. Can you give us an update on what's going on there?
Yeah, so the latest hearing on the legacy legislation was last Thursday, I think, the 23rd. And the British government are continuing to pursue this legislation, which will prevent families from going to court to get justice or to find information relating to the killings of their loved ones. Will stop all police investigations, will end inquests, and will stop all judicial investigations by people like the police ombudsman. So it's just it's the British government continuing with their cover-up in terms of their actions during the conflict, and it totally contradicts their commitments in the Good Friday Agreement, which includes incorporation of the European Convention of Human Rights, and also the Stormont House Agreement, which was signed in 2014, which obligated the British government to bring forward a process which would have justice at the centre and information recovery and victims run by the needs of victims. This legislation is being run by the needs of the British military to continue recovery. So it was heard. There was amendments put on which probably make the legislation worse. There was widespread opposition to it. The British Labour Party leader, Keir Starmer, was in Belfast 2 weeks ago, and when asked about it, he made it clear that if this legislation gets passed, if the Labour government is in position, they will revoke it. And so there's widespread opposition in the House of Lords from cross-party Lower Lords, Labour Party Lords, and of course it has been condemned by the UN, the EU, and national and also local human rights commissioners and victims commissioners, plus all the parties, plus the Catholic Church, plus all of the churches. So it has united everybody in opposition, the only people that's promoting it to the British government, and they're continuing to pursue it. So it's one to watch.
And you saw the 27 Congress people here in the States crossing party lines also wrote a letter condemning the legislation.
Yeah, so the Congress position is that, and that's because this is demonstrating the only thing that will prevent the British government moving ahead with this will be international opinion, because it's very clear they don't care about their own people in the House of Lords. They don't care about political representatives in Ireland. So the EU is essential. The US will be essential in making sure the British government pull this legislation and come back to what they had previously agreed, which is justice for victims. And there's a role for the Irish government in that as well. The Irish government can make it clear that they're prepared to take a case against the British government if they move ahead with this legislation and take them to court and get it overthrown in Europe, which they can do.
Yeah. Thank you for that update. Moving on to polling. Both North and South, the latest polls tell us we can read a lot into these polls. What might you share with us what you're seeing in the latest numbers?
Yeah, there's actually been a really interesting set of polls over the last 5 days. So in the North, Sinn Féin's position has continued as the largest party. It's been consolidated. The vote share in that poll is up from the actual vote in May. And the gap between ourselves and the nearest rival is still pretty clear. In the South, there was a poll, and it also demonstrated that Sinn Féin again is the largest party. Consolidates our position as the largest party, and then increased our vote share slightly. So we're at 33%, and our closest rival, Fine Gael's, at 21%. So quite a lengthy lead we're building up in terms of the to the south. And what is striking about that is, in 2020 was our best election. We had just over 25% vote share. The big question being asked of Sinn Féin was, can you continue or can you consolidate that?
Yeah.
And what we have done is not only consolidated it, but we have grown it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're in a good position. We take nothing for granted. And a lot of that comes down to the work that's going on in the US and people supporting us and to get our message out there. So all that's very good. And then there was a couple of sort of other polls, not just related to party political standing, that were interesting. There was one in Britain which showed that 54% of people now regret voting for Brexit, believe that Brexit was wrong. And what was really striking, there was only 2 constituencies in the whole of Britain supported Brexit in that poll. So, I mean, it reflects what the reality is. It was a bad idea, badly done, and now the English economy, the British economy is tanking. It's actually performing worse than the Russian economy, which of course is under sanctions.
Yeah.
So that's how devastating Brexit has been to Britain. Sorry, there was one other interesting one, and I know it has been raised in some conversations here.
Yeah.
And that was there was one of the polls looked at attitudes to the Good Friday Agreement,
mm-hmm.
and it's very relevant because it's the 25th anniversary, and it's very clear what the poll was coming out with was very clear that there's still a super majority in favour of the Good Friday Agreement.
Yeah. So
across the population it was 64%, but interestingly, within the unionist side of the community, opposition to Good Friday Agreement was at 54%. Now, people are trying to read into that as a major change. For me, that just reflects the changes that have happened over the past 25 years.
Yeah.
In terms of unionism has never been given the leadership that it has. And it's a bit like asking somebody, do you want to pay taxes? You know, it's that type of it. No one wants to do that.
Sure.
So that what that poll didn't ask was, what's your alternative?
Yeah.
There isn't an alternative to the Good Friday Agreement. It is still supported by the vast majority of people. It has delivered peace. The only thing that unionism can block is government and government formation in the North, and prove that the North is ungovernable in a political entity. So all of that's just really interesting pieces. And I think that there's a conversation to be had with unionism about, well, what they see as the alternative, because we're not moving backwards on this stuff.
You raise the, ongoing support for the full implementation of the Good Friday Agreement. This is the 25th anniversary of that, and there's, in America, growing support on both sides of the aisle. It's tough to find topics that can be supported on both sides of the aisle, and yet the Good Friday Agreement continues to serve as a clear indicator of there are places where there's clear support, as well as support for the British government to withdraw the legacy legislation. Why is it important for the members of the United States government to weigh in on these issues, and what does that process look like? Well,
I think there's a couple of sides. One is the US has got skin in the game.
Yeah,
I mean, this is the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement is a US foreign policy success, probably the greatest one of the past 25 years. Well, definitely the past 25 years, but I'd say maybe a generation or two.
Mm-hmm.
So the skin in the game, they have acted as guarantors for it, and the Good Friday Agreement is just as relevant today as it was 25 years ago, as we map out progress and how Ireland changes. And that's the really interesting thing about the Good Friday Agreement, is that it's not a settlement of the constitutional issue. It's a dynamic agreement for managing change. And that's why it's just as relevant. It's about respecting the rights of all, equality. It's about the core values of democracy and peace. And all of those pertain, and it'll be up to the people to determine their constitutional future. That's the reason why I think the US have got a role here to hold the British government to account, to act as a mentor for the Irish government, and also to keep on coming back to those principles and how successful the agreement has been and how successful the agreement will be as we manage these changes. And you're right, what was fascinating in terms of the politics in America, what strikes me, is this bipartisan support to this. There's 2 resolutions now in the House of Congress to mark the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. I am just dealing with what the common schedule will look like in March and April. And there's a huge amount of interest from the administration, from Congress, from the likes of the local the state assemblies to mark this achievement. And it's not just an achievement for one president, it's been for all presidents, all parties, Congresses and state assemblies, and for Irish America.
Yeah. And I would point to anyone listening or watching to visit our Linktree and visit our website. There's information there about where you can sign up to receive calls to action, to receive updates when there are opportunities to call your congresspeople to ask for their support. House Resolution 33, House Resolution 43 are currently being considered. If your member is not a member of the Friends of Ireland caucus, there are any number of ways that your representative can get involved, as well as at the state level with your state representatives. And you can find information about how to make those contacts and how to find your representatives on our Linktree and on our website. And I encourage everyone to visit there to help encourage our representatives to bring their leadership and bring their voice to the work. Can you give us an update then on the negotiations and the protocol, right? The satisfactory conclusion of this is would lead to elections, right? Or at least the sitting, yeah?
Well, there's a couple of things, and it's a good point, Greg, that you have raised where we are with the negotiations. And if you want us to see the importance of the US plays in shaping the political process, the British government had to set a path where they were going to dictate to the EU the terms and conditions of any agreement, and that would not have been acceptable. Pressure from the US has brought the British government to the negotiating table with the EU on the Brexit issue. The President has been clear, find a negotiated agreement within the parameters of what have been agreed, no negative impact on the Good Friday Agreement, and no hard border in the island of Ireland. That approach has always been the approach of Congress, all parties. So the success has brought in the British government to the negotiating table. We have the negotiations are ongoing. We need to keep the momentum to reach an agreement and to resolve these issues. And they're not intractable issues. They're very straightforward issues of bureaucracy and checks and paperwork on importation. So that could get done, and that could remove that obstacle. And then it'll come down to that doesn't necessarily mean the institutions will be set up, because unionism is yet to come to terms with their at the election fallout, where Sinn Féin's the largest party and they're no longer a majority. But so that's the negotiations are ongoing. We need to keep the focus on it to get a resolution. And the US is going to be central. And I always come back to this. The US brought the British government to the table. They will be the ones that will get the deal done.
Excellent. Thanks for that review. Any insights on the passing deadline for elections? The last deadline passed, which would have triggered elections on April 13th. Heaton Harris says he's looking at all options. What are his options?
Well, his options are to stick by the rules and have an election, or the DUP may come back into government, and that would mean an election isn't required, but the time's short now. Or he may change the rules yet again to suit himself. And all of this shows that the British government don't have a great strategy for dealing with this issue. And I'm always concerned whenever people say that the least worst option is to stop an election, or that election would be detrimental to this thing. It's part of the rules, it's part of the democratic discourse. We don't need an election. There was an election in May. Let's just get the assembly up and running. And importantly, that was one of the questions that was asked in the poll at the weekend. And there was the vast majority says that the DUP should get back to government and deal with these issues. So that's his options. That's his options. What he should do is do the right thing, and what the DUP should do is do the right thing. People need a government. There's a cost of living crisis, and people should be back around the table, back delivering for delivering for all in society.
Yes, for their constituents and everyone who voted for them.
Yeah. So we have no clarity. It's a case of watch and see what's going to happen over the coming days. There will be an election in the north in May, but that's a local government election.
Thank you for that update. I know that you are busy on the road, as you mentioned, a big tour there of New England. Anything on the horizon, or anything you can give us a preview of, or what to expect in this year, the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, or any other events coming up?
Well, the first thing I should say, if anybody's watching this as opposed to listening to it, I don't know what's up with the light here, but I do not have a problem with my blood pressure, and I have not been on the drink just in case people think that there's something going on.
There's a warm tone in the room. That's
yeah, and the light isn't great, but that's just.
We're making it work.
Well, this week I'm going to be, as I said at the beginning, I'm going to be in be leaving Boston later. I'll be in Springfield, Massachusetts, which I'm looking forward to because they unveiled a garden. They have a garden in 1916. A garden for members in 1916, and also one of the hunger strikers.
Great.
And I will then be moving on to, and I will also want to get time to see the monument to Bobby Sands in Hartford, Connecticut, and then I will be in Providence, Rhode Island for an event on Friday evening, and then an event in New Bedford on Saturday. And we're putting together the plans for St. Patrick's Week.
Great.
Which hopefully we'll have the Sinn Féin leadership in the US. Briefing administration, briefing political leaders, briefing the community about developments, but also most importantly about the opportunities for the future. And that is where the exciting bit is. You can get caught up in the day-to-day drudgery of politics, but we are a society in change.
Yeah,
we're in a society which can determine a whole new state, and that can never be underestimated. That is an exciting project. So hopefully we'll be back in March, and then we will be back in April to mark the Good Friday Agreement. And let's just say, watch this space. We might have some very interesting developments.
Exactly right. If you're not already subscribed to the newsletter, be sure to subscribe to the newsletter for the latest information. There's also a form you can fill out if you want kind of previews or calls to action delivered directly to you. You can sign up there. Thank you, Ciarán, again for your time and for a review of what's going on. We look forward to speaking to you again next month.
Okay, Greg, and hopefully I'll be back in Ireland.
That's right. Yes, indeed. Very good. Thank you.